Hello and welcome to this episode of Audible Anomaly, the podcast where we foster deep and meaningful conversation to help get you through your darkest days. I'm Josh, and in today's episodes, we are talking about all things health related. We've all kind of had to deal with the pandemic, as if you will, so we've all kind of had our challenges, but I figured it'd be a nice topic to kind of get started into getting a little bit deeper, since I know it's something that we haven't quite done as much, I feel, but we'll at least start getting that conversation going and start really laying down that foundation. But in order to have a conversation, I need friends. So today, I have my lovely friends with me. Let's throw it to Kevin. How was your week?
It was a week, man. A lot of stuff happened. So Monday, I was offered a job.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow, congratulations.
Fun stuff, thank you. And then Tuesday, I found out I was still in the running for a better job.
Ooh.
So we'll see what happens there. And also on Tuesday, I had to go in. The first job offer was like contingent upon passing a physical. So I had to drive out to their specific clinic. And it took like 3 hours.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that ate up a lot of my day. And this week I found out my grandfather, who's like 94 and has Alzheimer's, just started hospice care. And then last night he passed.
Oh no.
I'm sorry.
My condolences.
Thank you. So a week.
Yeah, a week for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Try and top that, Davey.
I'm not gonna try and top death. But I had a pretty normal week. Although I felt really, I don't know, lethargic about going into work every day. I really had that work blues. It hit hard this week, where it's just like every day I woke up and I was like, oh man, I cannot get in my car and get to my job and do my job all day. But I did. I persevered, I guess, is lack of a better term. Nothing too noteworthy beyond that. It was a pretty normal week, I guess.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah, just gotta power through it, man.
Yeah. How about you,
Yep.
Josh? How was your week?
Yeah. My week was relatively uneventful. I finally remember the thing that I forgot last week that I said wasn't that important. It's kind of true. I started doing some like actual weightlifting working out with a couple of bands I got. That was kind of what I started. So I've been aiming for at least 3 times a week, at least for now, 'cause I'm doing like full body workouts. So give my body a little chance to recover. But other than that, I mean, not too much. I pretty much was focusing on the Google Analytics cert, the data analytics cert, which I'm practically almost done with. I just need the case study at this point. So that's pretty exciting. But other than that, not really much else. We'll see, because I feel like next week might be a bit more involved for me. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But yeah, other than that, I think we can move on to our topic, and that is health challenges and just health in general. So naturally, we are, like I said, gone through global pandemic as of recording. Obviously, if you catch this in the future, it may not be the issue, or may not be the case, but I thought it'd be interesting to look at a couple of different health challenges that we kind of struggled through. And before we get to that, I thought we can have a little mini conversation before, and at least lay the foundation for that main conversation. So, have a couple questions lined up, like always. And the first one I thought would be pretty cool is if we talk about what is health to you, aka how would you define health?
That's a tough question. I mean, if I was going to define health, it would be pretty much the feeling good, I guess for lack of better words and better definition, the ability to feel good constantly throughout the day, not in consistent pain, not in bad mental straits, generally just feeling well and feeling energetic. Um, Obviously, there are outliers. You're gonna have those days where you're tired. You're gonna have those days where you're gonna have aches and pains because that's just part of growing up. But like, there just has to be a point where you're just feeling good all the time, or at least the majority of the time. And I kind of think that's what health really kind of boils down to.
Yeah, I definitely like the HWO standard for how they define health. So I'm just kind of hijacking theirs, where they look at it like kind of like a triangle almost, or at least I'm coining the term triangle, where you have physical, social, and mental.
Mm.
Those are like the three aspects of health. Physical, obviously, you don't have any ailments. You're, physically well. Mental, where, mental health, uh, maybe suffering from depression or something like that. That would fall into that category. And then the social is more interactions that you have with people and like communication. So that was, I thought, a very interesting way because it is, I think, something that plays into our overall, I think, well-being is, that I don't think a lot of us really take into consideration,
Yeah.
myself included.
Definitely. It's interesting. I grew up with a slightly different health triangle
Mm-hmm.
where it was physical and mental, yes, but then there was spiritual instead of social,
Mm.
which is kind of along the same guidelines.
Yeah.
Just how you
Just-
interact with other people, sort of thing.
Right. Just depends on the worldview that,
Mm.
that you follow, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I've seen like, what is it like? I think 6 different like things that I've seen people like call health, spiritual being one of them, and like
Mm.
they separate emotional and mental and just a whole flurry. But I just like the simplicity of the triangle.
Yeah, definitely.
That's all right. That's pretty good. So with that definition in mind, we'll move on to the second kind of question that we have here. And according to whatever your definition of health is, right? How would you consider, would you consider yourself to be healthy? Why or why not? And David, go for it.
Yeah. Would I consider myself healthy? No. No, I don't. I have a lot of issues. And obviously we'll get into them, but I would not say that I feel consistently good. There's a lot of days that I just wake up feeling terrible, both mentally and physically, that I could be better at. There's things that I can fix and there's things that I can't. So it's kind of like a weird in between of like I need to better myself, but also like there's just things that I'm not going to be able to fix and that just have to deal with for the rest of my life. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, for me, looking at the physical, social, and mental aspects of it, I definitely am not healthy mentally. I feel definitely going through a lot of stuff. And to be fair, I had to go through a lot of things kind of growing up. And I realize now that I didn't really deal with a lot of them. So it's like now kind of coming back to me and biting me in the, in the patukas. But it's one of those where it's like I didn't realize it was an issue or know it was an issue until you kind of just start going on and then you start looking at some of the social interactions that you have and realize some of these things don't line up. Why? And then that's when you kind of realize. So I'm kind of going through that where not necessarily the greatest health wise in a lot of aspects. And like I said, we'll get into that specifically a little bit better, but definitely could be better, but you work on what you can.
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah.
I'm doing pretty well health wise. Feels kind of weird. Similar to you guys, I feel there are areas where I could improve, but generally doing pretty well, and I'm happy about that.
Hey, 1 for 3, we'll take it. For what it's worth, I feel like if like we were all kind of like perfectly healthy, I don't know if this podcast would even be born. So
Would
take the
definitely be
positive.
different.
Yeah.
But all right, good stuff. Let's move on to the last one. Kind of cap this off here. What do you think the biggest health challenge in the world is, other than the obvious? Why?
My thought is anti-vax, and not even pertaining to the current worldview of like with the pandemic and all that, but just overall, I think it's a huge health crisis movement that needs to be, people's minds need to be straightened in that regard, because it's like there's potential for danger. We've spent so much time, and science has spent so much time trying to stop these deadly diseases from taking out so much of our population, and here they are just flying in the face of science and saying, nope, I don't want it. I would rather get the disease. And even if they're not directly saying that, I mean, that's the end result, right? Is I would rather than take this shot, get this disease, or my children get this disease and it potentially hurting so many people because of one bad mistake.
Yeah, there's like I'm in the same boat where I'm definitely not anti-vax, but I do acknowledge that right now we're issuing more vaccines into our children than we've ever had before, and I'm not going to say become an experiment, but we're definitely like we haven't had as many vaccines available. Granted, science has been as advanced, so I don't get it, but I understand why there's at least that initial like, is this the optimal thing? And then it becomes a snowball, and then they just disregard the science altogether. The main counter argument to them I have is it's better than the alternative.
Yeah,
without question. Sure, it's not great, but it's better than the alternative.
Yeah, I think my problem is a lot of the arguments that I'm seeing is never, oh, there's too many vaccines and what is it doing to our bodies? I feel like I've never really seen that argument from anti-vax. I understand that statement, but I've never seen that argument. And to me, it's like a lot of it is birthed out of this weird movement that we've been seeing of like anti-science in the world, specifically our nation. So it's just weird because it's birthed out of this idea that science is just bad and wrong always, which is, I don't know.
It's interesting that you say specifically in this nation, as it is actually a worldwide trend.
I know, but
it in quite a few other countries.
I mean, I stated with saying it was a worldwide issue, but most of it, I mean, you see a large portion of it at least started from our nation, but has moved on quite a bit to others.
I don't know. I feel like it developed independently in a couple different places. Like it's definitely spread from the US to a couple of other countries, but also started in a couple of other countries.
That's fair.
I just feel like we're more exposed to, obviously, the US.
That's fair.
But, I mean, it definitely doesn't help that for some reason we're the standard bearer, so people tend to look at us.
It's just within media, we are the generally the most consistent, even just on the internet and through general mainstream media. So the problem is when our mainstream media and our celebrities start spouting things, it gets everywhere, i.e. Jenny McCarthy, who is unfortunately one of the biggest proponents of the push and behind a lot of the anti-vax movement from the very beginning.
What about you, Kev?
Don't even know who that is. I would say that the biggest health problem worldwide is actually malnutrition, which can lead to a bunch of other diseases down the line, or just general poor health. And kind of irreversible. If you have a childhood of malnutrition, recovery is very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, uh, I think that it's mental health because it's so stigmatized and there's such a negative connotation, and I feel like it's getting better. We're starting to talk about it more, but I still definitely think it's a big obstacle. Like I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and they were like, "Oh, am I being like overly dramatic or like is this normal?" Like I don't I don't know, and it's like, well, of course it's normal. We're human, we're imperfect. We're gonna feel certain ways, you know? But like I think at least for me, mental health is probably the biggest health challenge I think the world is really dealing with. And I know especially with the pandemic, Japan has been like hit really hard with like a record level of suicides or something like crazy like that, which is absolutely mind blowing just because of I know cabin fever is a real thing. I've dealt with it myself a couple times even before this, but it hits hard, you know, especially when you're limited with what you can do. But yeah. Anything else to wrap it up before we get on to our anecdotes? Nope,
Nope.
they're shaking their heads. Okay. So let's get in to our health challenges. Let's who wants to go first?
Mine are very minor, so I'll start off.
Okay.
Like, my biggest health challenges are not getting enough exercise because I'm staying in the house all day, and more of an annoyance than a health challenge. But I may be developing tinnitus, which is just not fun.
Mm.
So
I'm
I
right
got
there
that going
with
for me.
you.
I think literally during the last podcast, I had a moment where one of you were talking, and all of a sudden, I just hear like a ringing for a good almost like half a minute. I was just like, So it's been at the forefront of my mind, but geez, that is not great.
It's tough. Tinnitus sucks. I've been dealing with this since middle school, and it's just like those times where you can't hear anything but the ringing, and it just goes on, and you're just like, ugh. Like it's almost more of an annoyance, at least to me, than anything. But it sucks when you're in that moment and you can't hear anything, and you just hear this ringing, and you're like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah, it can definitely drive you crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty, who wants to go next? Do you want to go, Davey, or shall I?
Sure. I'll go with like a current health challenge that I'm dealing with. Is my lungs. So I've had asthma for a long time, since I was a child, but it's always been very acute. It's always been very, very a small case. It was mainly like, hey, if you're gonna go do PE, you need to take your inhaler beforehand. Well, I had developed pneumonia like 3 or 4 years ago, and ever since then, I'll actually wake up sometimes with difficulty breathing. And that'll last for like 2 hours of my morning where I just can't catch my breath. And I feel like my capacity of my lungs, and obviously my weight is a huge factor in all of this as well. Like it's just, I have a difficulty overall breathing. Like if you see me sitting there just breathing heavy, no, it's because I just don't have the capacity in my lungs anymore. And I'm dealing with the weight, I'm dealing with the asthma, and like the pneumonia just has rendered me unfortunately very, very limited. And I feel like, just to speak on the current topic, I know we were kind of avoiding a lot of it, but corona's the same thing, the COVID does the same thing to you where you have these lung issues and then you're just going to like live with these problems probably for a while. So I know how that feels because pneumonia just rendered my lungs useless.
Yeah, it can really wreck you. For sure. For sure. I it's weird because even though mine isn't even remotely correlated toward the lungs, I actually get it because my stomach issues tend to almost have a semi-similar reaction for some
Mm.
reason. Um, so one of the things that I've pretty much been dealing with since high school, frankly, is due to all of the stress, depression, anxiety, and stuff of that I had to go through high school. Ever since then, I've been dealing with pretty much stomach issues on and off since then. So 12 plus years at this point. And it started off with just heartburn, and I had a bit of was it gastritis, I believe it is, where it's the inflammation of the stomach lining. So it started with that. The it sucks because I was gonna take the PSAT right, and then the night before, I ended up getting hospitalized
Mm.
because I could not breathe to
Wow.
save my life. Like I just felt a sharp pain in my chest and literally could not breathe at all. And it was to the point where I couldn't even talk. Like my mom, like did not know what the hell was happening. She was just like rushing to the local child's hospital, and just like, oh. So that was fun. I ended up getting released at about probably 12:30, and then the next morning had to wake up and then go to the PSAT. And then I remember halfway through like the first portion, the counselor walks in and like hands me like my meds because my mom had gone down to like the
Oh
local
my
pharmacy to get the medication. So so he just like he gave me a water and like my pill and just like, here you go, take this. But yeah, so ever since then I've been struggling with stomach issues, and it's I definitely notice it more with stress, and especially with kind of everything that's been happening with the on again, off again of work, and just the uncertainty of everything, really, or at least almost everything. It's been flaring up quite a bit. But yeah, I know last year it really kind of wrecked me, but I'm not sure if you want to share, if you have anything else to share, Davey or Kevin,
I
before.
mean, I'm riddled with problems.
Oh, like, okay. Well, like I said, if you want to share anything else, if you had
I'll
anything else on your list.
I'll for sure share one other thing. So I suffer from prolonged QT
Mm.
and heart dysrhythmia. It was an interesting journey because, so when my dad passed, he passed because his heart had stopped. So one of the big things is that my mom wanted to do is make sure that me and my sister didn't have any, like, it wasn't like a genetic problem and we weren't going to suffer something along the same fate. So she took us in and we ended up getting a bunch of tests. And it turns out that I have a issue. So the heart is broken up into 4 beats, right? The heart rhythm is broken up into 4 beats. Generally a letter correlating with those. I forget all of them, but I do know that the Q and the T are important in that at seemingly random intervals, the beat between my Q and my T will elongate. So there'll be time in between those 2 beats. And it is essentially, if something were to happen and I've hit that irregular beat, it could stop my heart completely. Like I could just have an unworking heart. Like one of the big examples they give is jumping into a pool. So if I were to hit the pool and the shock of the cold water were to hit when that beat is prolonged, my heart would then stop in the midst of the water. Turns out that this is an issue that my sister also suffers from. So it is a genetic disease, and it's something that my mom suffers from. So it turns out it's actually this heart disease has come from my mother's side of my family. So my grandmother has it, my mom has it, my sister and me have it. So unfortunately, if I ever have kids, it's something I'm going to pass on to my kids. It's not like the biggest concern. They have medicine that I should be taking, but I don't, because it is kind of a little more of a situational thing. Um, should I be messing around with my heart? Probably not. But I'm an idiot, so I'm just really bad at taking pills. Like I also suffer from ADHD, and it like really affected a lot of my childhood. And I should be taking medicine for it today because it still affects me pretty heavily, but I don't. I had an issue back in high school where taking the medicine affected me really heavily. Like I was like almost like cracked out, for lack of a better word. I was kind of freaking out. I was shaking. I was jittery. I was uh, had anxiety ridden. I was paranoid. It was just kind of a weird feeling where I had taken this medicine and it almost just like put me in this state where I felt like I was going to explode from the inside out. Um, and unfortunately, that led to a lot of my weight gain because ADHD medicine curbs your appetite like a lot, like a lot. Like as a kid, I'd eat nothing, but then I stopped taking it, and my metabolism went to shit, and I ate way more than I should have.
And then
I
you
just
realize food good.
food good. Oh, I love food. I'm always hungry, and here I am.
Yeah. I feel you on that. I mean, to be fair, at least with me, I've always been on the like heavier side, the higher BMI, if you will. But every single time I go to for a physical, everything's like perfect, just about. Sans like the stomach woes, which has always been mind blowing to me. But yeah, it's I don't know, that's crazy. It is crazy, but also like with a reaction like that, kind of understandable why you don't want to take it, because
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I know cocaine's a hell of a drug, but damn, that's
I mean, they equate, and I know it's not the same, but they equate stuff like Ritalin and Concerta to like speed, essentially, right? It's kind of this focus. It's like kind of within the same family of drugs, but obviously not the same. But I was having those effects, I was having kind of that like reaction to it.
mhm.
Um, it's it's one of the reasons why my mom used to give. So when we run out of pills and we didn't have enough money to go and get more medicine, my mom would give us sugar-free Red Bull because it would have an adverse effect on us. It wouldn't like hyper us up. It wouldn't like make us crazy. It would actually improve our focus and calm us down a bit as children. Coffee almost feels the same way too.
Caffeine is, I think,
It's
the big one where
it's the caffeine that does it, but it's like it oddly focuses us up a little bit and calms us down because it's the hyperactivity in the ADHD. Which, fun fact, they have determined that there is no ADD anymore. It is all ADHD. It's always just been that has always been the case. They have just miscategorized it originally.
Hmm.
Yeah.
the more you know.
Mm.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know, I think it was one of like my mom's coworkers' brother who was also had ADHD, and they just give him coffee to just like calm down. Yeah, because I think it's some way it it's handled in your brain is like it, instead of releasing adrenaline, it releases something else or something. I could be completely wrong, and if you know any better, tell us in the comments because we're definitely interested. But yeah, it's kind of crazy that it has such a different effect, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. I mean, see, that's weird though, because like I feel this not the same way, but I know, at least for me, I drink coffee kind of every day now, just because I realize even when I was weaning off of it, and I went a year without even really having much caffeine at all, and the second I got back onto it, it literally, like, I could drink a cup of coffee and just go to sleep. Like, I don't know why. That's just always been the case for me.
I can do
And
the same thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It relaxes me almost, which is kind of weird. But yeah, so it's like maybe I've undiagnosed ADHD. I don't know.
It's possible. There's a lot of people who develop it in adulthood. That it surfaces and surfaces in adulthood, and actually people react differently to ADHD in adulthood. It has different effects on people in adulthood, so it's definitely something worth looking into if you feel like you can't focus on things very easily and projects seem to fall by the wayside, or you find yourself like extremely drilled into something that you're passionate about and have to turn the entire, like you automatically turn the entire world off, and you become almost dangerously focused on something, because that's also part of ADHD, is that
Right.
that weird opposite.
Right. It's very possible. Like, I don't think I have it to like a severe extent if I do, but kind of thinking about it more now, kind of, sort of, like to a lesser degree. That kind of feels like some of the stuff that I deal with, or like,
Yeah.
So
I don't know if people notice it, but how often I like look over at something else in the midst of the recording. It's just it's hard for
I
me to
wasn't.
like. I know I do it. I realize it after I do it, but it's part of that, like the idea of like I'm trying to keep focus on things, but my focus is constantly pulled in a million directions. Like suddenly I see a movement over here, I'm going to be facing that way. It's just going to happen.
Right.
If you
Right.
feel that way,
Yeah, I don't think so. Don't know. I just never know where to look because of my setup, to be fair.
that's fair.
So there's that. But yeah, that's interesting.
I also feel like it's I'm sorry to kind of keep talking here, but I feel like it's almost an evolutionary part of humans, oddly enough, because it is that idea of almost being alert of everything going on, right? Don't lose yourself in here. Keep let everything pull your focus because danger could be on the horizon. I don't know if
Right.
that's kind of like an effect of humans in the past.
So it's yeah. I see that because it's one of those where it's like we had to have survived and make sure we weren't going to get attacked by saber-toothed tigers,
Mm-hmm.
back in the day. But
You roll your eyes at saber-toothed tigers, Kevin?
Not so much rolling my eyes, perking an eyebrow, but yeah, a little bit.
They're a real threat, Kevin, okay?
Oh, I'm sure.
I've fended off 3 this week.
Gotta pump those numbers up, man. Those are rookie numbers.
I live in a pretty saber-tooth free area. I don't know what to tell you.
what, do you live in a rock? Alrighty. You don't have any other, Kevin? You're
Yeah, I
pretty
got
good?
nothing.
Okay.
Healthy boy extraordinaire.
Woo. The healthy boy of Audible Anomaly. Confirmed. Or the healthier boy, I guess. Yeah, for for me, this whole episode idea literally came from kind of one series of events for me. And that was, I almost said last year. It's not last year. It's 2 years ago now. 2019. Oh boy, oh boy. I had a year. So, it starts off, I'm working for a computer manufacturer. And in January, there is always the massive electronics show called CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas. And I'd missed going the year prior, but this year I was able to finally go. So 2019, I finally got to go. So I get to see what all hype is. They brought me in to help out because they were doing a lot of they were focusing on a new like kind of sector, and they had a whole bunch of like new releases and stuff. So they brought me in to learn all that stuff to help talk to the media to, you know, talk about that new lineups because they needed the help because like I said, it was a big deal. So I study up, I'm anxious, I'm ready, and we show up Sunday night. I think the show is from Tuesday to like Friday, I want to say, is what I recall it being. So we show up Sunday kind of midday, and we end up flying into Vegas, which from Southern California is like an hour, not bad. And we go to the hotel, and we're like, okay, cool. Sunday night, we're gonna start kind of prepping because we're gonna start setting everything up on that night into Monday because they were having a pre-show press conference, which technically you're not allowed to do, but we did anyway. So we show up, and it's probably about, I want to say like 5 p.m. at this point, local time, and we were gonna head over to the site probably about 8 or 9ish. So I'm starting not to feel too great, but I'm like, okay, whatever. And I'm just thinking, not really thinking much of it. I'm excited because CES gonna go. So 8 o'clock rolls around, we walk over, and we start kind of setting up. And I'm feeling like trash at this point. And I'm just like, dude, this is weird. Like, I feel sick, but I'm like, I don't really know why. Like, I'm the kind of person that almost never gets sick, which is weird despite my stomach issues, which the only reason why I say that is because the majority of your immune system, majority of the cells in your immune system are located within the digestive tract, because it's, if you think about it, it's the only thing that's actually exposed to the outside when you consume food, all the bacteria and all that stuff. So despite having those stomach issues that I've recently discussed, still never got sick that often. So it was kind of weird that I was getting really sick. And my throat is hurting like crazy. So I'm like, something's up here. So in the morning, I end up going home because I'm like, or I end up going back to the hotel because I'm like, dude, I have no energy right now. I'm feeling like crap. So I go back to the hotel, try and sleep it off. Overnight, I have a massive fever. I'm like, this ain't good. So right outside the Venetian, where we had at least our booth for the conference, where a lot of the main players had their setup, there is a CVS. So I'm like, oh, they have the Minute Clinic. Should be covered under insurance. Let me just go in. So I go in. Sure enough, I test positive for the flu.
Oh.
I test positive for strep throat. I got both. So I was like, crap. They literally brought me in to be like the savior, like to help them out. And I have the flu. Crap. Fortunately, I was able to get the last Tamiflu that the pharmacy had. So the guy literally looked at me. He's like, how bad are we talking here? And I'm like with one eye, kind of like, dude, I need it. Trust me, I wouldn't be here. I don't want to be here any more than you do. He's like, it's my last one. I just want to make sure that you actually have it. Like, was it a strong positive? I'm like, the weak positive was a strep. Strong positive was the flu, bud. So anyway, so I end up taking that, and I still show up on Monday, but funnily enough, I'm like, hey, I told the guy, can you throw in a couple of like surgical masks just so I have them aware? So that was actually my first taste at dealing with masks in general before the whole pandemic. So it's kind of fitting. I had a lot of trial and error to get the masks to work because glasses. Such a hard thing. So I managed to figure it out then, so I don't have to really deal with it as much now, fortunately enough. But yeah, so I end up doing that. I show up, I have obviously a mask on, and they're like, dude, what the hell? Like, so then I tell them everything. And they're like, okay. So then I'm still helping out naturally with the mask on and stuff, doing as much as I can. But pretty much at this point, like, I talked to my manager who was there, and they're like, honestly, we'll just send you home. Like, there's no point in you. Just take a couple days off, just rest up, and just let me know when you're able to come back. Like, don't worry about it. They were really nice about it. They were awesome, frankly. So I end up flying home early, and over the weekend, I'm still not feeling great. Like, I end up getting over the flu, and then a day or two after, I'm like, I'm still not feeling too great. What the heck? So I end up going to a local urgent care. Turns out I end up getting bronchitis. So I'm like, ugh, fun. So I'm like, okay, great. Let's deal with this. So I go through bronchitis, get all the meds, and I'm back at work finally. And then all of a sudden, my stomach is just like, what the hell is wrong with you? Naturally, we think about it. I just taken a crap ton of antibiotics back to back. Yeah, my stomach's upset. So there's some nights where like it's just heartburn up the wazoo, and just my stomach is wrecked at this point. So I'm like, crap. Okay, so then I go into gastroenterology, and then they're like, okay, cool, whatever. They do some tests, whatever. They're like, okay, looks like you have some heartburn, etc. Let's treat it with some Prilosec or whatever. So they gave me a cocktail to help with that, and then I'm like, okay, whatever. Fast forward a couple weeks, and what I didn't know is that apparently, I think I tested positive for influenza type B, which isn't as common. But the crazy thing, and that I didn't know, is that this can cause a not so rare, but another condition that I actually have experience with, not myself, but my stepdad has gotten it, Bell's palsy. So all of a sudden, the left side of my face is just feeling numb. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me right now. What the hell? So I immediately start, I'm like, oh no, this ain't good. This ain't good. I'm like, fortunately, I knew exactly what was happening. I'm like, this is probably Bell's palsy. I didn't know you could get it from flu type B, apparently, I think it is. You can get it from the flu. It's a similar strain. I want to say it was B and not A. And I'm just like, crap, okay, cool. So I end up doing the teledoc thing. Cause I'm like, right now, it's like 9:00 at night. I'm like, there's really, I can go to the ER and pay like $100 for the visit. Not happening. Teledoc's free. Hey, here's my symptoms. They're like, yeah, definitely sounds like Bell's palsy. So then they end up sending some antibiotics and steroid for the face to hopefully get it to recover, because what ends up happening is it gets inflamed, so they have to like try and reduce that inflammation, and the way they do it is through the steroid. So the funny thing was that this was literally at the exact same time as we end up moving into this house. So this was, we had officially moved in January. So you guys had caught me right after, I think, the bronchitis and stuff, when you guys helped me move. And then, so naturally everything's still in boxes because it's been 2 weeks. So then I end up calling my boss. I'm like, so here's the deal. I can't feel the left side of my face, and I don't know if I can close my eye yet. So I don't know if it's safe for me to drive, because if that eye gets too dry, you could potentially go blind, and you don't have depth perception or anything. So I'm like, And so as a result, I have to tape it shut, which means I have no depth perception anyway, just to be safe. So I end up having to talk to her, and we end up coming up with this thing where they're like, look, we normally don't have a work from home policy, but clearly this is a random freak happening of events, especially for you. So they're like, we'll figure it out. So fortunately enough, I got to work from home. And can I say that steroid helped to pretty much unpack the entire house? I was bouncing off the walls and just like, I literally unpacked the entire house in about a week. I had so much energy, which was awesome. But yeah, so that ends up happening. Fortunately enough, I get over that, and even to this day, I still get like twitches every now and again. But for the most part, the muscles are relatively fine. There's like a little bit of like tightness I feel like right here that I know is never going to go away, but it's gotten to the point where it's just like I don't really feel it anymore because I've just gotten so used to it, thankfully. And other than that, that's really the only thing. The only thing I have to keep an eye out for is that it can be reoccurring. It's pretty common once you've already had it to get it again, because my stepdad has gotten it 3 times. Yeah, so it's like, cool, got to keep that in the back of my mind. But yeah, so that's been crazy. I wish that was it. It's not. So then my stomach starts having another round 2, like really bad. So I'm like, okay. So I go back to the gastroenterologist or whatever, gastro, and they end up doing an endoscopy. Because they're like, okay, clearly you've had the PPIs and stuff, and it's not working. So they go in and they end up finding a little bit of gastritis and a hernia. So I'm like, great. So they're like, yeah, we can try and treat it with some more, PPIs, give you a stronger cocktail. But also like that could lead to like long-term effects. And they're like, if worse comes to worse, we can do a surgery. But pretty much at that point, I ended up saying, sod it all. And that is why I started brewing kombucha. To help with digestion. Not so much with the gut bacteria, since, yes, it does have probiotics, but it's not as much as like kefir. But it has a similar effect to like apple cider vinegar, and that a little extra acid helps break down the food because I have very slow digestion, which is something that I've found out as a result of the whole gastro thing. So yeah, I mean, that was pretty much my year, like the first half of my year. And I'm just like, geez Louise. And then we go into 2020. I'm like, you know what? This year is going to be a good year. I'm not going to have any of these issues. And the pandemic hits. And then the world got my energy.
Well, did you have any of those problems in 2020?
Stomach issues still. Absolutely. No. To be fair, like I said, that's been ongoing. Lately it's been okay, surprisingly enough. So I don't know if it's kind of I cut down a little bit on my caffeine intake. I started drinking half as much coffee and then supplementing the other half with chai. So I've been doing a bit of chai, bit of cacao in there too. Like, so it's got chocolate chai kind of drink. It's kind of good. And then working out, I'm sure helps a little bit. But I don't know what's kind of causing it to be a little bit better, but I'll take it, because especially when it comes to my mornings, man, it's been bad. Like, so when we worked together, Davey, we would carpool. Part of the reason I was almost late almost every day is because I'd wake up an hour before, go to the restroom and be stuck there for like an hour.
Dang.
Yeah. I have very slow digestion, and it's something that I just gotten inherently. Grandma has it as well on my mom's side, and I think my sister has at least a little bit of it, not as bad as me, but so it's like only so much I can do at that point. But yeah, so but lately it's been okay. Every time I go to the restroom, I still end up being on there for a good while, but that's what phones are for, you know. Just find a couple games, catch up on the news, check your stocks. You're fine. You know, you're fine.
It's funny. I'm in the complete opposite side of that spectrum. I learned when I was young that I have no my nerves are extremely weak down there, especially within my lower intestine, because I had an issue where I was impacted,
right?
My lower intestine, which is for the longest time as a child I had to on a daily take laxatives. And there was a point where I had even set up a TV in my bathroom with a GameCube, and I was just playing GameCube in my bathroom for hours at a time. So my everything is super weak down there. So essentially when it's time, it's time.
Whoosh. And you're done.
Whoosh. Whoosh fraba.
Okay.
Anger management.
Yeah,
that's what you're thinking. That's the quote.
Thank you
Gotcha.
for explaining that one. That one
You're
went by
welcome.
me.
I noticed it was confusing you there. You were thinking
Whoosh.
about it pretty hard for a second. But yeah, so it's weird because I just you talk about being in there for a while, and I know a lot of people a lot of people are like that, and I'm like, man, I don't know what you're talking about. In there, in and out, 5 minutes, boom, let's go.
Yeah, for me, it's and I don't want to get too graphic, but it's it'll come in waves. This is really what it is. So it's I can either be here probably for 5 minutes and then come back in 10. And then come back or I can just sit here, wait, and then just get it all up. That's at least for me, and I know grandma is kind of where it what it is. But remembering to breathe while you push, super beneficial. Cannot be stated. No, I'm serious. You could blow you can rupture some stuff if you're not careful. It's an actual thing.
On the topic, remember not to push too hard. That is a bad thing.
Remembering to breathe helps you not push as hard.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I've never had this problem.
Fair. If you do have this problem,
I'll remember. I'll never forget.
Don't forget to breathe. But,
anything else from you two?
That wraps it up for me.
Do we want to hear from our listeners?
Oh, we absolutely want to hear from our listeners. And if you want to join the conversation, every week we shoot out a little social media blast and try and get your feedback on whatever the topic is, because we love hearing from you. So if you follow us on any of the socials, it's at Audible Anomaly, or if you want to keep it a bit more private, you can always try and find a carrier pigeon that will get to me, or the better way is to email us at audibleanomaly@gmail.com. So, with that said, let's get into our audience responses. We have 5 lined up today. Kind of our usual suspects, but we do appreciate it. We have Jav Buff, who says, every now and again, I still get random nosebleeds. Also, when I was younger, I would get sick constantly due to ongoing stomach and tonsil issues. Since then, I've had my tonsils removed, and my stomach seems to be doing a lot better now.
Did you guys ever have your tonsils removed?
Nope, they're still there.
No, same.
Yep. Yeah, cannot see them, but I'm sure they're there.
Mm-hmm. Someone will zoom in and crop it out. Enhance.
Right. They'll magically add more pixels.
Yep.
'Cause that's how that works. But, I would never get sore throats. I'd only ever get strep throats. And I'm actually surprised that I never got my tonsils removed. Because of how much infection I would get there. Like, that was like the only thing that I would ever get, really, growing up, strep throat. But, yeah. Also, I want to say it was Washington who ended up dying because of strep throat. He ended up getting a heart attack because of strep or something like that. Don't quote me on that. It's on the internet, so it has to be true.
Fair.
But I remember hearing something about that. I no idea. I wasn't there, so. Alrighty, moving on to the next one. Aspiring fate. This is an interesting one. I have two, but the biggest one is not being able to gain any weight, even if my life depended on it. It kills any motivation to work out since I can try as hard as I can, and I never see a fluctuation of more than a few pounds at best. It sucked when I was a competitive skier. I also struggle to fall asleep most nights. My typical night is laying down around 11:30 to 12 o'clock at night, then laying there until about 3 or 4 in the morning before I finally fall asleep. I believe he was saying it's something like he can't turn his mind off, and he's just constantly just thinking and laying there. So I have a little bit of a insomnia.
I have the same issue, but mine's a little bit more weird because when I lay down, my heart starts to race, and I can feel it beating out of my chest, and I can't make it stop. And then I'm awake for like another 2 hours before I can actually like my mind and body has calmed down till I fall asleep.
Interesting. Interesting. At least in terms of, like, I mean, obviously he can't turn his head off or his mind off, which is kind of sucky. The weird thing is that neurologically they're saying it's literally impossible to stop having specific thoughts or like thoughts in general. Like, it's just, at least as the recent studies of neurology, it's impossible to. So the only way, because I know like with like anxiety or depression, you can't control your thoughts, but the only thing you can do and kind of the technique that you get around it is to introduce new thoughts. So the idea of, rather than, oh, hey, I'm feeling like crap. Like for me, like I tend to always remember all my failures for some reason. Like they'll come in like a wave of like depression and just like, oh, I remember that one time when you effed this up. Oh, I remember that other time you did that. So I always have to like take a step back and like, okay, I can't control those thoughts right now, but here's what I can do. And you kind of just shift the momentum and you're able to introduce like some different thoughts. So my usual go-to is I'm always the kind of person that like I always have like a list of things I need to do. So I would always just think, okay, what do I need to get done tomorrow? Okay, there's this, and that. How am I going to do that? Okay, I need to do this, and that. And then it usually gets me out of that funk. But yeah, it's a weird neurological thing that's kind of crazy that I found out about more recently. But yeah, kind of talking along that same breath, actually, Kelly, and this is the person I was talking to about the anxiety and whether it's normal to feel like mental health woes, right? And this is kind of a paraphrase of what she said, because it was a little all over the place in terms of like so many, not necessarily all over the place. That seems like terrible. I'm sorry, Kelly. I really meant more like there was a lot of info there, so I kind of just like paraphrased what she was saying.
Compacted.
Yeah, that's what it was. So she's like, I would definitely say that I've been dealing with anxiety lately. It's not officially diagnosed, but I notice I tend to overthink things a lot. My choices, decisions, everything I've done in life. Lately, it's been weird because my last 2 jobs offered me a job. And then I got a job offer from a new place that I applied to. And then after that, even a sister company of the last job reached out to me as well. It's been crazy, and the whole time I'm wondering if I made the right decision. Even though I strongly feel like I did make the right choice, I can't help thinking of all of the what ifs. Yeah, and it's something that I mentioned to her, that the wifey kind of, has this thing of anxiety, of always kind of worrying and thinking a bunch of like, oh, what if this, or and it's so hard because I don't ever really know how to like help in that regard, but the one thing that we've both kind of realized is, or found out, is apparently anxiety is it can trigger the fight or flight in our brains. So you'll get a moment where, because like one of the main things that I know wifey's dealing with is that she's exhausted all the time. And part of that is because of that fight or flight, that you end up getting a surge of like adrenaline, and then you crash hard and you're just exhausted almost all the time. So it's like that kind of like sucks, because again, you're just like, how do I help? I don't know, and it's always tricky in that regard to like help out in any way, really, you know. But yeah, like I said, we feel ya, we feel ya. So we'll move on to the next one, and Jeezy, who honestly is kind of like you, Kev. He's been fortunate enough to not really deal with any major health issues himself, but the biggest one that I've had to deal with is what happened to my dad. He is a diabetic, was a lifelong smoker and drinker, never took care of himself. It finally took its toll and had to have both legs amputated. What made it difficult is that he had to have several amputations. They wanted to see if they could stop the gangrene and infection from spreading, but his blood is so contaminated that after the third amputation, they decided to just cut above the knee and stop any possible spread. He is also allergic to the anesthesia, so they only had him go under if it was absolutely necessary. Jeez Louise. Goodness me. Wow. I read that before, but still, even saying that out loud is crazy. Here's a piece of wood, bite on it, like Civil War amputation style. Jeez. While recovering from the amputations, they discovered his 4 major arteries were about 90% clogged and had to go into immediate heart surgery. After a long and grueling recovery process, he is alive and well, and I am honestly surprised that he was able to get through all that, especially in his age. His will to live, fight, and overcome this is incredible and truly an inspiration to me. Little run clap there for Jeezy's dad, because Jeez Louise, pun not intended. That is insane. And yeah, I mean, I saw him the other day. He seemed in good spirits. So didn't get to converse with him or anything, but saw him from a distance. Yeah, that's incredible. It's incredible that he was able to get through that. And we wish him all the best. Lastly, we have the photographer. I would have to say the worst health issue I've ever had is when I got mono. I came down with it during winter break right after I started my master's program. It started with body aches, and then it just wiped me out. I was sleeping probably 20 hours a day. I was also running a high fever. Then about 2 weeks into it, I came down with a sinus infection. Couldn't breathe at all. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It left me on bed rest for about 3 to 4 weeks before I had enough energy and strength to get out of my apartment. However, at one point, while on bed rest, I couldn't find anyone to take me to the store or go shopping for me, so I ended up driving myself to the store just for soup and Gatorade. I was so physically exhausted afterwards that when I ended up getting back home, I fell straight to sleep. probably shouldn't have done that now that I think of it, but I really needed the stuff. Whew. That's another crazy one. Jeez, I'm happy, not happy, that's the wrong word, but at least it happened during winter break, and I hope you didn't miss any of your master's program as a result.
It's interesting hearing all these stories and thinking of how like, and I'm sure we all knew this, but really bringing it to light of the one problem so easily leads to the next. You know, you go from like, you have this one problem and now you suddenly have a sinus infection and now you suddenly have pneumonia and now you suddenly have, and like, it's the same thing with like mental health. You have poor mental health, it's generally going to lead to physical problems as well. It's just crazy how much those two correlate with each other. You have poor mental health, there's a good chance you have poor physical health, and if you have poor physical health, good chance it leads to poor mental health. So definitely good on Jeezy's dad for like not letting it spiral into that, because it's tough. It's tough not to let one thing spiral into the other.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I know stress manifests itself differently from person to person. They still don't really fully understand it, but like, yeah, like for me, it's in stomach issues. For other people, it could be something even worse.
Drinking problems develop a lot from
Yeah.
stress.
Yeah, absolutely. Which then leads to other problems, and it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. It is crazy, but that's gonna wrap up this week's episode.
Mm-hmm.
So we hope all of you are doing well and hopefully healthy, or as healthy as you can be in the current situation, in your current situation. But yeah, if you want to join the conversation, feel free to reach out to us on social media at Audible Anomaly, or shoot us an email at audibleanomaly@gmail.com. Before we wrap things up here, though, Davey and Kevin, up to you. What are you guys working on?
Same stuff as always. I'm streaming over on Twitch, playing video games. Trying to make it more fun and entertaining every day. So go check me out. Twitch.tv/DPRLTRON, DPRLTron. We're having a lot of fun over there. So join us.
Woohoo. Absolutely.
Can confirm. Lots of fun. I'm not working on anything really.
He's working on having fun.
Working on working and having fun. Yeah.
Working on getting 2 jobs. Pining after you.
Yep.
There you go. For me, you can find me at Bromium404 on YouTube and Bromium wherever you get your social media. And that's pretty much gonna do it for this week's episode. Next week's, I think we have a banger lined up. I recently, in my data analytics certification, stumbled across a data set that looks at what really extends lifespan. So it's a collection or meta-analysis of different studies that have been done and kind of compiled into one giant data set. And effectively, it looks at what contributes and detracts, I believe is the opposite word, from your life. So what can give you potentially additional life, additional years on your life, or what can take away potential years from your life. So it's a very interesting kind of study thing that I stumbled across that I thought would be pretty awesome to react to and get your feedback on. So we will talk about that next week. So until then, we've been Audible Anomaly, and we hope to see you around. Bye.